So let's just take this specific example and break down the tools.
Great.
Because I want everyone listening to be able to walk out of this not only empowered around what these emotional triggers are trying to teach you, but to also have a couple concrete steps to take today.
Yep.
So that they can start to do the repair. Because I agree with you that if you start to repair yourself, if you start to become whole, that is going to be the best way to improve your marriage, to improve the way that you impact the team at work, to improve your relationship with your kids, to improve everything.
Everything.
So you're at dinner.
Yep.
You're cooking dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And describe a situation and then tell us what we should do.
Great. So you're cooking dinner, you put it on the table, you've probably had a really stressful day managing a million different things. And then you put dinner on the table and your kid says, oh, chicken again. I hate chicken. Okay, right. Ooh, and you just go off, like you're so ungrateful. And
why didn't you cook dinner?
Why don't you cook dinner?
Well, maybe
you're
your
so
father
spoiled.
should cook dinner.
And
yes.
Exactly. You just go off. Okay. So what can we do? Okay. So number one, I want everyone to actually form a sentence that starts like this. I am a good parent who. And here's why that sentence is so important. What we all do to ourselves and our kids is we collapse behavior into identity. I did a bad thing becomes I'm a bad person.
Right.
My kid did a bad thing means I have a bad kid. And then we can't tolerate the thought that we have a bad kid because it makes us feel like a bad parent and we act everything out, right? When you say to yourself, I am a good parent who, and then you insert
Let's do
a behavior.
Person. I'm a good person since
Yes,
there's those
perfect.
of you that I'm
a good person who yelled at my kid. I'm a good person who hasn't worked out for a week even though I told myself I'd work out daily, as an example, okay? When you say I am a good person who, you reclaim your good identity and can separate that from a behavior that frankly is probably just not in line with your own values. Like if you want to work out, it's just not in line with your values that you didn't work out. If you don't want to yell at your kids, it's not in line with your own values that you did. And we miss that when we go into I'm a horrible human being. If anyone saw me, they would, they would think I'm a monster. So that is a really powerful sentence to practice every day. And you could practice it at night, looking back on a moment you weren't proud of. I'm a good person who got mad at my partner when I was really stressed about my day. It actually allows you to repair with your partner because you can only repair from a place of feeling like a good person. Because if you're instead in bad person mode, as we know, all of our energy collapses into ourselves to be defensive because it's just too intolerable. So I am a good person who, and if you do have kids, it is game changing to say that. I have a good kid who's saying I hate you to me a lot. Okay, whoa, but they're still a good kid. Why? Oh, why'd they say that? Why would I say that? That's interesting. Because I have a shitty kid. No, wait, I have a good kid. I have a good kid who's saying I hate you. We activate curiosity with that sentence. It's so powerful. So that's step one. Step two is what I call double repair. Repair is the single most important strategy to get good at as a human. I really, really would, put my signature on that. And if you think about what that means, is if you are supposed to practice getting good at repair, you have permission to keep doing the thing you need to repair for. Because the only way you can practice repair is if you do that thing. So sure, I said it. Dr. Becky said I had to yell at you, honey, because I have to practice repair. It's going to happen. So repair really allows us to add in all the elements to our own body and our kids' body that we're missing in the first place. Because when you go back first to yourself, right? And let's say it's after that dinner incident and you say, whoa, I'm a good person who yelled at my kid. Okay, wait, I'm a good person who yelled at my kid. I didn't mess up my kid forever. I can do this, right? You kind of reclaim that goodness. And then you can go to your kid and essentially say, or maybe it's your partner, hey, name the incident, right? I yelled at you earlier. Number two, explicitly say, and this is important, it's never your fault when I yell at you. Kids especially have to hear that because if we don't tell them something's not their fault, they wire self-blame just to gain control and safety in the situation. And we don't want one more generation of people who's wired with self-blame when they struggle.
Yeah.
It's never your fault when I yell. And I know there's a part of everyone who's like, but it kind of was their fault. And they said, it's not. Again, we respond to our own body. Now, if you want to say to them tomorrow, 24 hours at least later, hey, I wonder, what we could do about dinner. If you could, tell me the foods you like, or I wonder what you could say to me if you don't like what I serve. Because of course you're allowed to not like something. There's just a lot of ways of saying it. That's a separate conversation.
Right.
Totally separate. So name what happened, say it's not their fault, and then say something like this. I'm sure that felt scary. You were right to feel that way. And just like you have feelings we're trying to help you manage, I do too. And I promise to work on them more. It's not only important in my parenting, it's just important for myself. Repair. Repair changes the direction of your own and your kids or your partner's circuitry. It is so powerful. And then I think number 3, I think if we think about, I call it like the road to reactivity. Like if the last part of the road is yelling at my kids about dinner, right? That's the end of the road. As long as I'm on the road, I'm going to go there. And actually the key is to wonder, what signs do I have that I'm starting that road? Because we often say, like people say to me, they're like, okay, so what am I supposed to do when, no one helped me with this, and then I did this, and then my 3 kids did this, and then this happened. How do I not yell? I'm like, I have no idea. Okay, I just think we have to upgrade your question. I think we have to upgrade.
What would the
question.
upgraded question be?
I think the upgraded question is, when did I start down a pathway that ended in me feeling depleted and unworthy? Once I get to depleted, unworthy, then of course my kid commenting about my food triggers every feeling I have. And maybe it starts, oh, you know what? I did tell myself I wasn't going to commit to like any more PTA meetings. And I did sign up and I spent my whole day in this meeting I didn't want to be in. Or I did tell myself I'm going to sleep in one of the days this weekend.
And I didn't do it.
And I didn't do it.
So
right?
let me ask you this as a final question, because I know so many of my listeners and your listeners struggle with this.
Yeah.
So that is beautiful, doable, actionable, 3-step advice when you do it to someone else. Let's say the issue that somebody starts to uncover is the fact that you're giving up on yourself.
Yeah.
And so let's say that you are going to make a commitment that you're just going to promise to get up in the morning and you're going to meditate, or you're going to promise to get up in the morning and you're going to go for a walk.
Yep.
And you continually don't keep the promise to yourself. What are the steps to not only repair that abandonment of self, but to also empower you to start keeping a promise to yourself?
So I think what I'd say there is we want to get curious about a part of ourself that clearly is kind of taking over the driver's seat. So right now, if you're saying, I really do want to get up and take a walk in the morning. And I think this is an important step to say, is that really put from a place of shame and guilt, or from a place of living in alignment with my values? If it's from shame and guilt, oh, I'm a horrible, lazy person. Yeah, no one ever motivates from that place. So I think we have to ask ourselves that question. If it's like, no, like I just know it makes me feel better. Like it really does. And yet I don't do it. Okay, that's a good start. Then I think the next step is there's some part of me that activates in the morning and sends me some message that stops me from getting out of bed. And it's okay if I don't know what that voice is, but I'm just going to start listening for it and being curious. And right now, if everyone even imagines this part, a key to behavior change is realizing that we have feelings or thoughts that are a part of us and not all of us. And they only become a problem when they take over all of us. So maybe it's even as simple as like, I wake up and there's a part of me that's like, oh, I'm so tired. I can't do this.
Were you in bed with me this morning?
I was. Wow. Right. So there's this part.
Yeah.
And then what's really key is we often think we have to shut down that part or shoo it away. Going back to aloneness is always the problem. That part's just looking for a magnet. Once a part of us or a feeling has a magnet and a partner, it actually is no longer as powerful. It gets cushioned. So it's the difference between saying, I know I'm tired, but other people do this and you're so lazy. No. Versus, hi, tired part. Literally saying hi to it. Hi, tired part. You always activate first in the morning. Here's the thing. I know you're real and you're tired and you're a part of me. Not all of me. And I know there's also another part somewhere in there. She's just quieter right now. Saying, I can do hard things. I can do hard things. And even if I don't kind of activate her now, maybe tomorrow morning she'll get a little bit louder just because she hears me saying, even though I can't hear you, I know you're there. And there's something about telling ourselves when we're struggling. That part is real, right? That's why we say hi to it. So we're validating its existence, but then reminding it it's a part of us and not all of us. This is going to sound so cheesy. My 5-year-old does this at night when he's worried. We've taught him.
I don't think it sounds cheesy at all.
He talks to he calls it his worry boy about the things he's worried. Hi, worry boy. You always get loud at night and you tell me the things I'm worried about and you're a part of me. I'm going to cry. And he goes, not all of me. And I also have, I'm safe boy and I have happy memories boy. And I'm just going to listen to him a little bit right now. And I always think for my son, like, I feel like that's going to make him, like, quote, succeed in the real ways in life more than anything he learns in school. Like, it's incredible. I'm like, wow, he's wired that at age 5. Like, I'm working on that now. So that language, and we can walk through it a little bit. Start by greeting it. Say hi to it. And there's like a humor I like to have. You know, like, oh, I could have predicted you would pop up. There you are again. It's always the first thing. Okay, like you're kind of a broken, because those voices, they are kind of broken records. Like they're boring. It's
right,
like,
and then they're heavy. And
yeah, there's the heaviness. Okay, you know what you're going to do now? Now you're going to convince me I can just start tomorrow. Oh, yep, that's what happened. Yep, I got it. Okay, hi, I hear you. And this is IFS language part of this too. There's something to saying to those parts. I hear you, and I'm just going to ask you to step back. And just to make a little space for a part of me that can activate even when I'm tired. And it's so respectful. And it's so empowering. And it puts you back in the driver's seat with these different parts instead of having a part that takes over.
It's so loving.
It's so loving.
Dr. Becky, you are so good. You said that you rarely see anyone with chronic anxiety who is not addicted to something.
Yes.
And that there is a tight connection between anxiety and addictive behavior. Can you explain that and help us understand that?
Sure. So I'm going to mention the E word here, and I hope you don't shut off.
Ego? I won't even understand it. Can you explain it without the ego? What's that?
Your ego is kind of like an overprotective mother. Right?
Okay.
Like it doesn't want you to go and play on the swings because you might fall off. It doesn't want you to talk in front of people because when you did that when you were in grade 6, people laughed at you. And
is the ego the same thing as the alarm?
It's related to it through the amygdala as well.
See, I'm already confused.
Yeah, I know. So I'm not going to get into too much neuroscience. But basically, your ego is hooked into the amygdala, and your amygdala says, we're never doing that again because that hurt us. You know, whatever it was. And the amygdala never forgets. So it's basically getting into bypassing that ego, because the ego is so overprotective that it will not let you go back into your old alarm.
So the ego is thinking.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, it is something that it talks to us with thinking.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, but let's talk about the connection between anxiety and addiction.
Okay. So basically, we need something to help us through this alarm.
Wait a minute. I think I just got it. Hold on.
Okay.
Let me see if this is the answer. You ready?
Go.
Is addiction typically somebody's coping mechanism for the alarm? So, for example, you reach for alcohol because it drowns out the alarm. You reach for porn or drugs or stress or whatever because it...
Achievement. Yes.
Got it. Okay, I got it. So, if somebody is struggling with addictive behavior, whether it is alcohol or cigarettes or vaping or it is any of that stuff, you are more than likely not addressing the root issue, which is the anxiety and alarm that's continuing to go off in the background.
Yeah. And on top of that, basically, the ego is very powerful. It doesn't want to let you go back into that. So the only way that you can feel love, connection, whatever, is alcohol, is codeine, is cocaine, whatever you're addicted to. So
wait, but you feel the connection to the alcohol or the codeine. That's what you're saying. So this is why I get confused with ego because I'm
Sure.
like, I don't give a shit about the ego. Let's
Sure.
talk like the alarm. And then what makes sense to me is that addiction mutes the alarm
Totally.
and that you become bonded and connected to, for me it was stress, for my husband it was a daily weed habit,
Okay.
like for what that and that addiction is what's muting the alarm. This
Yeah.
is really cool. So
Yeah.
where does mindset come in? Because you there is so much out there about mindset and mental wellness, and it's interesting because this conversation with you makes me desperate for a different word than mental health. Because
Sure.
even the word mental health makes me go neck up, makes me
Exactly.
think thoughts, makes me go to just what's going on in my mind. And what you've taught me today is a game changer because what you've taught us all is that no, 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 no. All mental health issues start in the body and they start with this kind of reaction that happens in your body to stored trauma or to a threat or to uncertainty. And then that signals our minds, and our minds then start spinning thoughts. And if we don't address this alarm system in our body, which has a purpose, which is there to protect us, which is supposed to agitate you, but we exacerbate it. We try to mute it. If we don't learn how to turn inward and heal all of this in our body and turn toward this alarm and soothe ourselves and love ourselves and give ourselves the reassurance and the support or whatever it is that we didn't get in childhood or what we need in that moment, that is actually the beginning of all healing. That's what I'm getting from you.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it is. So I would
Why do we
love
call it mental health then? Like, what isn't there? Can we come up with a different word that would actually signal you that when you're struggling with depression or you're struggling with anxiety or you're struggling with any like addiction issues, that it's not a mental health issue? It is a body something. Like, I don't even know how to describe this
well, it's
because
an
it's the
entire
exact
system.
opposite of the way that we think about things right
Yes,
now.
it is the opposite. And I love, to come up with a better term than body set, but I think that's
Body
kind of
set?
what it
What is
is.
that? That feels like weightlifting.
Well, no, well, it's like mindset, body set. Like
Oh,
what is the
mindset.
place
What
in
do you
your
think about
body?
that?
Can you regulate your body? Because if you regulate your body, your mind will get regulated. If you regulate your mind, your body might get regulated. So what I'm saying is that if you go in through the body, your body's much more likely to relax your mind than your mind is to relax your body. Because you can say, hey, relax, hey,
Oh,
calm
whoa,
down.
whoa, whoa. Did you guys hear that? That was a wake up call for me right there. You were just dropping freaking knowledge, Russ. Okay, hold on. I'm going to state this again. And now I have menopause brain, and so I've just forgotten what I said. You said something like your body, if you regulate your body, it will
Yeah.
regulate your mind. But if
It's
you
much more
regulate
effective.
your mind right, you say it because you're the one who said it.
Yeah, it's much more effective to regulate your body first, which will automatically regulate your mind, than to try and regulate your mind to regulate your body. Because your mind lies to you all the time. Your body never can.
Is this why exercising is such an effective thing to do when it
Partly,
comes to anxiety and focus?
partly, but there's something beyond exercise. There's something within the somatosensory cortex, or the part of the brain that controls our movement and our sensation. When we activate that, we start getting into the sense of the body and out of the rumination of the mind.
And
So
so by
that's one of the,
activating that, is that what you're saying? You can activate that part by doing the exercises you've already talked about in terms of locating where the alarm is and then finding a neutral part in
yeah,
your body, breathing into it.
and
Do
just
you all?
movement. Just that's why yoga is so effective because it brings you into your body. Anxiety at its root is really a mind-body disconnect, right? We go up into our heads and we stay in our heads because we don't want to go down in our body because that's where the pain is. So we don't want to go into feeling town down in our body. We want to stay up in our thoughts. And that's another addiction. So we get addicted to worry. And that's why it's so hard to treat anxiety just by trying to fix thoughts, because we're addicted to thinking already. We don't need any more thinking. We need a lot more feeling, but we don't want to feel because that's where the frickin' pain is.
Wow. So I've gotten a couple huge things
Okay?
from this. That first of all anxiety results from a separation
Of some kind.
anxiety that has some kind of separation experience or feeling separate from other in
And
childhood
self. And self.
and self. But what you just said too was really interesting, which is our response to that alarm or that feeling of being separate from self or separate from others or attacked by others or whatever, is that we actually do separate from ourselves. Anxiety and the alarm system, the way that most of us respond to it is to separate from our bodies, go up in our heads. And the way to quiet the alarm and ultimately turn it off is to come back and join in with yourself and come back to where the alarm is sounding off in your body, and then find a neutral or safe space in your body where you can draw your attention and breathe into back and forth and back and forth. And that when you quiet the alarm and when you go toward it and soothe your own body, that is the step that you need to take if you want to heal this. And that the thinking is part of the toolkit. Like, what would you recommend as some sentence that we could say if we're trying the tools, we go into our body, we're soothing ourselves? Is there something that people could say or repeat to themselves that you find is effective with the more neck down approach?
Absolutely.
What
So
what do you say?
basically this. Am I safe in this moment? Am I safe in this moment? I know I've got a presentation to do on Friday. I know I've got a big tax bill. I don't know how I'm going to pay for it. My mom is sick. But am I safe in this moment?
Why a question? Because I like saying I am safe.
You could do
I
it both. You
am
could do it both
okay.
ways. I find that people with anxiety, though, this is the thing about saying I love you in the mirror, is that people don't allow that in. The reason why you're anxious in the first place is because you block love. So when you say I
Whoa,
love you,
whoa, 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 whoa. The
yeah,
reason why you're anxious is because you block love?
for yourself, yes.
What?
You're separated from yourself. That's exactly what it comes down to. That's what anxiety or alarm really is. It's a separation. And this is what I do. This is my little, we didn't get into my little intuitive thing here,
We're
but
going to in a minute. Hold on.
okay.
We save the best for last, but hold on. Okay. Keep talking about the fact that when you have this alarm going off,
Yeah.
you are blocking, like, just say it again.
Well,
like, I'm processing, hyper processing now. I'm just like, oh my God, I think I got it. I think I got it. I think I got it. That literally your alarm is asking for love and reinsurance.
Absolutely.
And when you go into your head, you block yourself from receiving it.
Yes.
When you
And
go
you block
into your
that child.
body and you breathe into the alarm and soothe yourself, you are actually giving yourself love.
Yes.
Holy shit.
And a lot of people with anxiety just they're uncomfortable with love in the first place. I'll give you a very quick example from my own life. So my dad, before I was 10 years old, was this wonderful guy. Like he was so connected to me and nurturing, taught me how to hit a ball, play chess, all this kind of stuff. Very, very connected to him. And I loved him greatly. And then as I got to be a young teen and his schizophrenia got worse and worse and worse, and he became suicidal and a bunch of other things, I withdrew from him because to see him in horrible depression was just too painful for me. So I blocked my love for him because it was just too painful to feel it. And that you can't block love from a parent without blocking love on some level to everyone. So there's a reason why I've been married 3 times. So this is one of the things. So when you find the blocks that you have to loving yourself, this is how you heal. And this is basically my little intuitive gift is I can tell people where their blocks are to loving themselves. And then when you remove those blocks, the anxiety, the alarm just kind of fades away. So this is really going at the root cause protocol as opposed to just trying to make you think better.
Wow. So how do you help people find that place where they've blocked love?
Well, I go through their body, you know, Like what I believe, the short version of what I believe happens to you is as a child, you experience an overwhelming stress. It's too much for your conscious mind to handle, so you stuff it down. Freud would call it repression. You stuff it into the unconscious. And the body keeps the score, just like Bessel van der Kolk says. So because the body is a representation of the unconscious mind, and the unconscious mind is where these old, damaging programs are stored, they'll show up in the body. So I will find in your body where you feel that alarm and reverse engineer it to get into the same room with those unconscious programs, and then I can change them.
Wow. That's pretty cool. I think my biggest takeaway, and I keep saying this because clearly every 10 minutes I have a life-changing takeaway from this conversation, but my biggest takeaway is the connection between the alarm that goes off and the love that you're not allowing yourself to receive.
Totally.
And that it's beautiful to think that loving yourself is the way you cure anxiety. And what a beautiful thing. And it reminds me of something pretty amazing that my son Oakley shared with me. I said to him the other day, I was like, dude, one of the things I love about you is that you, more than almost anybody I have ever met, are just so comfortable with yourself. Like you really seem to like yourself. And now, I should preface this by saying that, this is a kid that really struggled. 3 different schools before he was done with 8th grade, severe dyslexia, got so severely bullied at a camp that we had to pull him out of it. And the director wrote a long letter apologizing for everything. Like this kid has been through the ringer. And he said to me, well, Mom, he said, I realized and he said, this happened during quarantine. During quarantine, when I got to hang out with you and Dad and, my 2 older sisters, all 4 people who love me, I just started to realize just because other people pick on me or hate me doesn't mean I have to hate myself. Like I could actually just like myself. Like I could really just allow myself to love myself. And I got to be honest with you, from that moment, I can really almost pinpoint that during the pandemic, like this kid's chronic anxiety was gone. He developed this very positive attitude, and it all began from this insight around, hey, if the world is not giving me the acceptance and the love that we all are seeking, maybe I can just give it to myself.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I never thought about meeting the alarm of anxiety with acts of self-love.
Yeah. And that's, it's counterintuitive on some level, because when you're anxious, you don't feel loving. Basically your social engagement system is shut off. You're in survival mode. So when you're in survival mode and survival physiology, you go into the emotional part of your brain, which is, evolutionarily programmed to look for threat. And if there's no threat in your environment, if you're just lying there in bed with the sheets up to your neck, you will find threat because you can make it with your big prefrontal cortex. You can make worries.
Well, not anymore, because we now know that the second you feel the alarm go off, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you do not go upstairs. You go downstairs.
Yep.
You go downstairs.
Yep.
I want you to understand that nervous system repair is your ability to switch between the 2 nervous systems that you have. That's right. You have 2 nervous systems. You have a parasympathetic nervous system and you have a sympathetic nervous system. And when you're happy, safe, when the lights are flowing the way they need to, when the dimmers work, when the alarm's off, that is your parasympathetic nervous system. That's the one we want to flip on, okay? That's the nervous system that allows you to relax. It allows you to tap into your confidence. It allows you to focus. It allows you to do your best work. It allows you to let in love and experience joy. I love, love, love the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, the other nervous system is the one that we need to deal with, and that's the sympathetic nervous system, which is a really weird name because sympathetic is what researchers call the fight or flight nervous system. Sympathetic is the alarm bell. It's the part of the nervous system that got turned on during traumatic situations. It got turned on as you were experiencing discrimination or poverty or teasing or abandonment or any of the various things that we've talked about that could trigger a traumatic experience. And here's the thing. If that sympathetic nervous system gets flipped on, it can get stuck there. And what you have to repair is you've got to repair it by turning it off when you get triggered. I am telling you that part of the reason why we're having a hard time reclaiming our confidence and our focus and our presence and our contentment in this world today is because we are all in a state where our fight or flight or fawn or freeze nervous system is still on. And we're going to turn it off today. And here's how we're going to do it. Because you've got this wiring, right? Running through your body, just like electricity runs through the walls of a house. And the electricity is always there. Nervous system and the wiring's always there. But in order to turn the lights on and off, you flip a switch. And there is a switch inside you. This is so cool. I wish they taught this to kids in school. This should be human being 101. When they hand a baby in a car seat to parents, they should also give them a little pamphlet about the vagus nerve, because we all need to know this. This is a game changer. The vagus nerve is a treasure in your body. And for free, you can learn how to use it to soothe yourself, to gain your confidence, to flip between being on edge and being calm. And you want to be calm, because when you're calm, you can make better decisions. When you're calm, you're present in your life. When you're calm and confident and safe and secure in your body, you're a better leader. You're better with your family. Like, this is the heart of everything. Because if you're running around like I used to run around, feeling on edge and dysregulated and easily triggered, this is a nervous system issue. That's what this is. This is your nervous system revved up. This is you living on edge as if something's wrong. This is like, you know, when you get a text and you immediately feel like you've done something wrong. And then you rewrite the text 15 times and you throw in emojis so nobody's mad at you. You want to know why you do that? Your nervous system. You're on edge. Everything's a threat. Everything makes you triggered. And so when I got serious about this, I discovered the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is our secret to changing this. It is a light switch that helps you turn the light on or off. And I believe that in some way, your life, or the last 3 years, or the uncertainty that you have come through, or the issues in your life that you have survived, have left the light switch on. Your nervous system is in a state of alert. That annoying light bulb is blinking in the background, and it's time to turn it off. And so we're going to turn it off using the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve runs from your seat all the way through your body, through every major organ, through your vocal cords, and all the way up to the top of your head. And the technical term, when you flip the switch, is you're, quote, toning the vagus nerve. That's what researchers and neuroscientists say. I just say, let's just flip the switch. Let's just use the vagus nerve. And there's lots of ways that you can do this. So the vagus nerve, when you hum, when you sing, I think one of the reasons why so many of us love singing, whether you're singing in a religious ceremony or you're singing with friends or you're singing in the car as you're driving, you don't realize this, but in addition to just music's awesome, is that when you are singing, you are flipping the switch on the vagus nerve in your vocal cords. Another way that you can flip the switch is high-fiving your heart. So we wrote about this in the high five habit. You just take your hands, and let's do this together right now. We're going to put our hands right in the center of our chest. Put one hand right on top of the other. Okay? And then we're going to take a breath together. Here we go. And I want you to just push in, because I really want your vagus nerve to know, okay, we're going to turn you on. And we're going to take another breath in. And then you're going to repeat 3 sentences with me. I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm loved. And I bet even just in those 15 seconds, you felt yourself come back home into your body. And if you can hear yourself even thinking those 3 things, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm loved, it's true in this moment. And it's a way for you to signal to the vagus nerve that you've just pressed on that you're okay right now. It's okay. We can flip the switch off. We can come back into our body. And one of the cool things about this high-fiving your heart is we did a study with 164,000 people in 91 countries. So a study with 164,000 data points. And this worked for absolutely everybody that tried it as a calming tool. That a lot of kids started using it in school. Like, you get picked on, you go into the bathroom, high five your heart. You can come back to your center. You can flip off the alarm that got triggered by some kid picking on you. And you can flip the switch and come back into your confidence. People at work, you do a presentation and everybody stares at you like you got 4 heads and nobody says good job and you get triggered. Of course you get triggered. Put your hands on the heart. Come back into your body. Flip the switch off. Regain your calm, confident self. This is available to you. And I want you to use it because I don't think you realize how much your nervous system getting triggered when somebody cuts you off in traffic. Zzz, there it goes. See? Everybody's out to get me. No, they're not. Hands on the heart. Come back into your body. Turn the lights off. Flip the switch. Get your power back. Another way you can do this, take a warm bath. Just go soak in a tub. It's amazing. I love doing that. Absolutely love doing that. And another way that you can do this, you see this all over the internet. Cold exposure therapy. Now, I have a tub that I climb into. I hate it. Absolutely hate it. But this has been transformational because when you put yourself in a situation, whether you're jumping into a lake or you're sitting in a cold bathtub or whatever, standing in a cold shower, just end your shower with 30 seconds of cold water. It sucks. And what you're doing is you're exposing your body to a situation where your nervous system turns on. The lights go on, baby, when you climb into 34-degree water. And it freaks out. And then you calm yourself down by breathing. And you are training yourself that even in situations where I get triggered, even in situations that are awful, like 34-degree water that I'm sitting in, I have the power to flip this switch and calm my ass down, breathe through it, and know that I'm going to be okay. That's a freaking superpower. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, are you shitting me, Mel Robbins? You're telling me to deal with trauma by taking a freaking bath? You're telling me that I can handle abuse from childhood and poverty and all this crap that I've had to deal with, losing my spouse and by taking a cold shower? What is wrong with you, woman? Yeah, I am telling you that because this is not about the shower. This is not about the bath. This is about you and your nervous system. This is about you training yourself that you have the power to be okay, no matter what's going on around you. That you are bigger than the things that you survived. That, yeah, by standing in a shower, you're training yourself for confidence, for the capacity to feel something and get triggered and not let it hijack your life. That's what this is about. And when you do that, you take that new you into your life. You take a person who has the capacity to have shit go sideways in your life and not get hijacked by it. You become the kind of person that could have survived horrendous trauma and be able to heal yourself over time. you become someone. Like, there is this incredible power in you. I've spent my whole life feeling rattled and on edge. And I'm telling you, I got serious about healing my nervous system and understanding the role that it plays in my day-to-day life, and understanding how when I'm easily triggered and on edge, I'm a shitty mom. And don't even get me started about what a nightmare spouse I am. When I'm nervous and on edge, like, I make the people that work for me nervous and on edge. I am a better leader, a better parent, a better wife, and I am a way better Mel in terms of what I'm experiencing. And so I've already explained the therapy, EMDR, the guided psychedelic therapy that we have done both as a couple, as individuals. We've recently done something guided by therapists as a family, which was extraordinary. And high-fiving your heart, humming, chanting, all of these things that tone your vagus nerve. But there are two other things that you can do that are free that will help you dip a toe in the water of exploration. One is audit your day. Just keep a notebook. This is free. And just notice when the wave of emotion comes up. And all you have to do is just kind of write down just what happened and what triggered it. Was it a particular thing somebody said? Was it a look on their face? Was it just a feeling that you got? And just become curious about it. Not like, oh, something's wrong, but just like, oh, interesting. I wonder where that faulty switch is. I wonder where that little nick is. Where's that little mouse that chewed on something that's a blinking light. That's all that is. So get curious about it. And then start to ask yourself, when you get home tonight and you sit down, it's kind of quiet, go, when else have I felt like this? When else in my life, or who else have I felt this around? What situations where did I have a similar thing? And you'll start to be able to trace back. And that is a pattern of responding to a certain type of situation a certain way. And so you can do this free audit, and that will help you become more self-aware. And that then helps you to apply the tools you just learned in those moments when you feel the surge coming. It also helps you avoid those situations. It helps you talk to somebody about those situations. And one other thing that you can do is journaling is an incredible way to either start or end your day and start to forge not only new neural pathways, but new stories and new awareness around these things. And so one prompt that you can use that we've talked about is, how can I make this easy? Another thing that you could do if what you're seeking is peace is you could write, how can I make today peaceful? How could I make myself feel safe today? Those are all prompts that you can use to cue your mind, body, and spirit and your nervous system that this is something that matters to you, and to really just gain awareness around it. Because you are able to be in control of your emotions. You are able to repair your nervous system. And you can take control and not let this response that has been with you for a very long time continue to control you. And that's the opportunity here that's really exciting. If you feel like there's big things that you can't access, that there's this missing piece, that happiness is evading you, that you just can't quite put your finger on why you're in this cycle of relationships, I'm telling you, please take your nervous system seriously. Please start to investigate more about the vagus nerve. And, this is one of those topics where I was going to pull out studies and do all this stuff, but there's so many studies on this. Like, it's sort of like meditation. Which meditation study do you cite? There's so many. The vagus nerve is incredible. The new research coming out about the therapeutic modalities that are helping trauma and depression, all going back to nervous system regulation. Incredible. And your kids are experiencing situations that make their nervous systems sound the alarm. And so you can teach them these tools too. And when you do, what you're training yourself to do is you're training yourself to locate this power source inside you. Because we all know there are going to be things in life that trigger you, period. There are going to be moments where I walk on snow and I go right back to that car crash. But I don't have to let that memory or that trauma experience then ruin the rest of the day. I can come back into my center and turn the light switch off. I can find my power. There are going to be plenty of people that tell me no in business. And I get bummed and I get rattled and I go down the rabbit hole. I'm not good enough. And I can soak in my misery and wallow for a little bit. And then I can locate the switch inside me and I can turn the alarm off. And so can you. And when you do, you will discover that not only is there a whole different world out there waiting for you, but there's a whole different you waiting inside of you that will allow you to experience happiness and presence at a capacity that you can't imagine. Like if you've ever gotten a puppy or a kitten, or you've ever had a baby, or you've ever fallen in love, these experiences make you realize you have a capacity for love that's greater than you realized. And doing the work to locate the vagus nerve and flip the switch on and off and settle my nervous system from disruption and dysregulation and on edgeness to calm, cool okayness. It's been the single biggest change I've ever made in terms of the impact that it's had on the quality of my day-to-day life. And so we're going to do a shitload of shows on this. And I'm going to introduce you to all kinds of things you can do over time. We are just getting started on this, but I think that particularly this time of year, whenever it is that you're listening to this, as you're thinking about ways to be happier and healthier, this is a huge component of it. And so please locate that switch and start flipping it off. And you'll be shocked. I mean, it's just awesome. Narcissism, I find to be an absolutely fascinating topic. And the reason why I don't think it's dark is because I believe that when you understand what it is and what it isn't, and when you have tools, all of a sudden there is a light at the end of the tunnel that you're walking down. And you realize you're not crazy. You're around somebody who's making you believe you are.
Correct. That's beautifully put. And I agree with you. In a way, what it is you're giving, back in the day we would have said a road map. No, I'd like to think of it as GPS. I'm hoping to give people a guide to what they're dealing with, and not in an accusatory, you're bad, I'm good way, but in more of a, this may not be good for me. And the challenge in this space of the narcissism space is so many people invest themselves in, can I get this person to change? Can I be better? Can I do different to pull something different out of them? And it's to say, stop. That's not going to change, right? It's like trying to change the weather. There's nothing you can do to make Chicago warmer in February. It's going to be cold, bundle up, great city, but it's going to be cold.
Okay.
Right?
I want to just go, there was a wake-up call right there. When you're done listening to this episode and you understand what narcissism is and you learn the signs to spot it, takeaway number one is you cannot change the weather in Chicago,
no.
and you cannot change the behavior of a narcissist.
Nope.
So let's start at the beginning, because people are fascinated by the topic of narcissism. The word is now thrown around all the time. What is the definition of a narcissist?
Okay, so let's get I even want to go to step 0 from step 1 here, is to say narcissism is not a diagnosis. Okay.
Wait, what?
It's not. Everyone's like, don't diagnose people. I'm like, okay. I roll up to someone. I said, if I called you stubborn, would you tell me I'm diagnosing you? They're like, no. If I told you were agreeable, would you tell me I'm diagnosing you? No. Then why are you saying narcissism's a diagnosis when it's not? It is a personality style, just like agreeableness, just like introversion. All of those are personality styles. Nobody's getting themselves all the bee in their bonnet when we say those other things.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I thought that this was like a diagnosis. See, already I'm learning stuff from you.
So narcissistic personality disorder is a diagnosis, right? Okay, that is.
Okay.
That's a very specific, 3 words, specific. It's like, let me put it this way. No one would get mad at you if you walked up and said, gosh, you're sad. You seem a little depressed. Don't diagnose me. we'd be okay with you saying, oh, you're sad, you seem a little depressed, right?
Yes.
Why? Depressed actually is a kind of a clinical term, right? Depression, it's actually called major depressive disorder, is a diagnosis. That's actually more on point, but this word has got people so worked up. Don't diagnose me. It's interesting. It's a pattern that is rewarded by society, and yet people don't want to be called it. I'm like, pick a lane, folks. So let's start here. It is a personality style. It is a maladaptive style. It is an antagonistic style, but it's a style, no different than any other personality style.
Okay, so just so I make sure that I'm tracking and everybody's tracking. So basically, we've collapsed two things when we talk about narcissism in society. There is narcissists and narcissism, which is a personality style that is maladaptive that we all might exhibit at some point.
No.
Oh, okay.
No. I got a personality. You got a personality. People listening and watching this, they've got a personality, and that's their personality. I know. For example, Mel, I'm introverted. Okay. Everyone's like, no, you talk so much. Oh, heck no. There was a day the other day where I didn't speak to a single human being and I didn't leave my house. It was the best day of my week. And people are, aren't you sad? And we're going out. I'm like, have fun. Don't call me. Like, we're good. So I am a naturally introverted person. I am never going to be the life of the party. I am never going to want to go to a party. I am not a joiner. And after I spend time with a large group of people, I collapse into bed. Okay.
Yep.
That's my personality. Okay. I've been like that since all my life. All right.
Okay.
And that got shaped. So if that is my personality, some people aren't a little bit introverted. There's an extroverted person. If you've ever spent time with an extroverted person, they actually kind of lose their mind. I don't have plans. Where is everybody? I can't believe I need to be alone. I've worked with clients who are extroverted and they really are upset about that. And as an introverted therapist, for a minute, I was like, what? Like, that sounds like fantasy camp, like 3 days alone. Sign me up, you know,
Right.
but I have to be empathic to this is hard for them.
Yep.
They're exhausted by being alone. I have an incredibly extroverted child. And when she's alone for 6 hours, she actually starts feeling very sad. And that's real. I can't say, don't be ridiculous. Use your time alone. Like, just like if somebody said, don't be ridiculous, Romney, you're at a party, you know, lighten up. It's the same thing. So that's why I'm saying you are what you are. I actually think a lot of people out there don't have narcissistic qualities. So this leads us to, then what is this?
Right.
Personality style.
What is this? So
It is-
but there's two things, just so I'm tracking that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about narcissism as a personality style.
Yep.
And then narcissistic
Personality
personality
disorder.
disorder,
And I'm
which
gonna-
is a diagnosis.
It's a diagnosis. And you know
Got
what?
it.
I don't even think we should talk about it.
Okay.
Because the fact is, only 1 to maybe 4% of the population has this personality disorder.
Okay.
The vast majority of cases are never diagnosed. And it is I actually think they should get rid of the diagnosis. I think it serves no
Wow.
function whatsoever. I really don't. It's the only diagnosis in the world where having it means you do more harm to other people than to yourself. Most disorders are based on the distress that the person themselves are facing. A person with major depressive disorder is really struggling. A person with generalized anxiety disorder is experiencing distress. Even other personality disorders like borderline personality disorder, these are people who are having a lot of distress. Narcissistic personality disorder, as long as life's going the way they want it to, they are happy as can be. And until something goes wrong, then they make a mess, scream at everyone. And then when it goes back to the way they are, they tend to make more money. They're much more successful. They tend to have more success in dating. So this is a tough diagnosis to give out. Now, let's break down what narcissism is.
Okay, great. So I just want to make sure, because this is such an interesting topic, and obviously there's lots of content out there all over the place, but you are, in my opinion, the world's leading expert on this. And so what you're basically saying is, if we just understand what a narcissistic personality is, that's enough.
Yeah.
Because then you can spot the signs.
Yep.
Then you can learn to protect yourself. And if I'm going to extrapolate what you're saying, you're basically saying the 1 to 4% of people that ever get that diagnosis anyway already have the personality type. So it doesn't matter. It's just blown out of proportion, and they're finally now in therapy. And don't most narcissists don't know their
go to
narcissist.
therapy. That's the thing. That's what I'm saying. So there's a lot of people out there who may have this quote unquote diagnosis. They're never going to get diagnosed because they're never across the table from a licensed mental health professional who's actually the only person qualified to issue such said diagnosis. And I'm going to be honest with you, even the majority of people who have the disorder, it's never documented anywhere because the insurance company ain't going to pay for therapy for it because you can't do anything about it. So you see what I'm saying?
Hold on. So that was also just, you just said it again. You cannot change the weather in Chicago.
Nope.
And you cannot do anything to change somebody with a narcissistic personality?
Yeah, and let's push this a little bit further, okay? So I'm going to be sort of a provocateur here. Personality is tough. There's different schools of thought on how much personality can change, all right? There's a little wiggle room. And I think the greater a person's flexibility, psychological and personality, the healthier the person is. It's almost like your body. The more flexible you are, likely the more you work it out, the less likely you're going to develop osteoporosis and break bones and all that. Flexibility is everything. But I would say it matters more psychologically than it even means physically, right? It's why people stretch before a workout.
Oh, that's interesting. Because what I'm thinking about right now is there's a pretty famous TED Talk, but I think it's Dr. Schwartz talking about personality. And what he basically says, and now I'm realizing it's the flexibility you're talking about. He, like you, said, I'm a professor and I am very introverted. But when it matters to me, I can be flexible. I can stand in front of that, that classroom and I can profess. But the second that lecture is over, I collapse.
I'm done. That's it. That's it.
So the flexibility you're talking about is that an extrovert like me can shut up and be alone when it matters. An introvert like you can step in front of the mic, invite people into your home when it matters. But that flexibility is very limited. It's tied to when it's important to you, but then you go back to your baseline. Is that what you're saying?
Always.
And so,
in fact, there is a theory, and I hope I credit it to the right person. I think it's Campbell is the one who writes about this. The idea of the rubber band theory of personality. And the idea of the rubber band is that we all have our personality. A rubber band's just sitting there in its state. That's who we are. But we can stretch it. Okay, we could stretch it a bit. But when back to baseline or even at times of stress, we go to our baseline personality, right? The challenge is that person with a narcissistic personality not only has trouble stretching, it's not even the stretching as much as the changing. You see, here's the challenge with the narcissistic personality, which I still haven't described and I'm aware of it.
Sorry.
But the challenge with the narcissistic personality is that it's a very egocentric, self-serving style, right? It's designed to get them what they need. It's what helps them feel safe, what helps them feel happy with very little regard for anyone else. Other personality styles, agreeableness. In fact, agreeableness is considered the counterweight to narcissism. So narcissism is actually what's called, it's a real personality style is disagreeableness or antagonism, right? So if narcissism's disagreeableness, agreeableness is the other side of that. Agreeable people I love agreeable people. They're the best. Like I just would like a little commune full of them. We're never going to take over the world and we're not going to make a lot of money, but let me tell you, so fun. Empathic, warm, flexible, make accommodation for other people, follow the rules, highly ethical. That's agreeableness. Opposite of narcissism, right?
So what is narcissism?
So narcissism is a person who has a lack of empathy, and I'm going to talk about, or performative empathy, which I'm going to get to in a minute. Okay, but they have inconsistent or low empathy. They're very entitled. They're arrogant. They're egocentric. They're chronically validation and admiration seeking. They need to be in control all the time. They are poorly emotionally regulated, prone to show strong shows of rage if they're frustrated or disappointed or aren't getting their way. They're very easily provoked and very thin-skinned. If anyone gives them feedback or criticism, like, rah, they just rage very quickly. They can't regulate themselves at those times. They're very pretentious. They tend to be very superficial. The list goes. It's that kind of stuff. Now, the core of narcissism is a deep insecurity. And that's the piece we forget. These are not people actually who, at their most primal unconscious level, believe they're hype. All of this stuff is to create almost a suit of armor around that unprocessed insecurity. The narcissistic person is always fighting a battle against shame. And the shame is that at an unconscious level, people are going to see they ain't all that. So if anything even pokes them, that like even someone makes a joke at their expense, they lash out to maintain dominance, because that's that. You also want to know what motivates the narcissistic person: power, dominance, control, and frankly, safety, because all those things keep them safe. If they're in control, if they're the boss, if they have all the money, then they feel okay. All the power, whatever, the fame, whatever it looks like, then they're okay. That's narcissism. What's tricky about narcissism is there's different, I forgot to also say, they're very grandiose. So they live in a fantasy world. I'm going to have the perfect love story. Look at my perfect life. You can see how social media took this grandiosity and blew it up into something that I've been studying narcissism since before there was social media. And I was like, what the holy hell just happened?
What have you seen?
I mean, what happened was narcissism's always been around. As long as there were human beings. I mean, I'm guessing like Attila the Hun was probably a narcissist. Napoleon might have been a narcissist. I think if you go all the way back in the history books, in fact, when I helped my daughter with all of her ancient and, even modern European history, I'm like, narcissist, narcissist, narcissist. And I said, you see how much they shaped history to this day. So I think that it's always been there.
Yeah.
Okay. The difference was back in the day, if you needed validation, okay, you and I are both old enough to know about rotary dial phones and no answering machines and no social media, okay? So there was a time if you needed validation, you actually had to clean up and leave the house.
True.
Right? Like you
Yes.
actually had to get up and go. You couldn't become famous, right? Even if you wrote a letter to the editor of the newspaper on some kind of rant, the editor was going to get 100 of these, or they'd get 100 of these and pick one. So there was no public place to do this. So where narcissists really did their dirty work was they would harm the people around them. Very dominant, probably cruel to spouses, cruel to children. I think if you look at family lines of this intergenerationally, they'll say like, yeah, really brutal father, really brutal grandfather, really brutal great grandfather. And it often links to things like hierarchies, patriarchies, like things that are all very, very hierarchical. One person gets the final say, not because they're a good person,
Right.
but just because. So these systems have always been there. And so what happened though is one day, I remember it so well. I remember the house I was living in. Somebody said to me, have you seen this thing called Facebook? I'm like, Facebook? And I remember what a Facebook was. A
Right.
Facebook was
When you go
that
to
group
college.
of pictures
Yep.
that you'd get in your first year of college. Like that's what it was called where I went
Yep,
to
we
college,
had one at
right?
Dartmouth, too.
Yep. So there's a Facebook. And I'm like, what is a college thing? And they're like, no, you need to go check this out. They said, create an account. So I did. And I was like, oh, this is what happened to all those people I went to high school with. Okay. But at the moment, I thought, oh God, you just write stuff and people like it? What went through my head in that moment? I remember my kids were really small at the time. And the moment sticks in my mind. I thought, this is going to be a disaster. It must have been like being like a pulmonologist or a cardiologist when cigarettes were out. You're like, what is happening? And so at that moment, I thought the game's about to change. I had no idea what was going to come with the Instagram and the influencing and all. I had no idea what was coming there. But I thought, wow, nobody needs to leave the house. They can put forth a false version of themselves, the grandiose version, the fantasy version, and sit at home and let the validation come in. My concern was that this was going to make their narcissistic symptomatology worse overall. And I think that has been borne out.
Wow.
So-
So can I ask you a question? Because this is one of the things that really changed my life. When you taught me that narcissists are not born, they're made. What is it? Can you explain that to everybody? Because this is a game changer
Yeah.
to understand this.
So nobody's born this way. Okay. I mean,
So
I guess
even in a family structure where you have a grandfather, a father,
Nope.
like these dominant or mother person, you are not born a narcissist.
everyone listening to this, I will say there are 4 kids in our family, and I have a brother who's narcissistic, and the rest of us are really cool and nice and kind to each other. So I think of how many people out there who have siblings, and like my sister's really kind, and my other sister's really, really narcissistic. So if that was the case, it should appear in all siblings, or at least 50% of them.
So
It's
how
not
does it
that.
get made?
It's made. So here's the most likely explanation. is that there may very well be, and this has not been isolated yet, but there may very well be a biological vulnerability to it. And that would be probably delivered through something called a child's baby's temperament. Temperament is the genetic part of our personality. Anyone who spent time around a baby will know some kids soothe really easily. Some kids are just, they're easy. They're easy, smiley, friendly babies. They're really sweet kids, right?
Right.
And as they grow up, they stay sweet and the teachers like them and they have friends and they're just sweet, sweet, sweet. Then there are those kids who will not stop crying and they're demanding. And as they grow up, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. And they're always doing things for attention and they're disruptive and they won't sit still. And as they enter preschool and school, the teachers always, shh, sit down, stop that. So they're already starting to get kind of bad vibes from their constant attention-seeking behavior. It's probably an interaction effect. The kid may not be getting enough attention or attachment needs met. So you have this biological vulnerability.
Yep.
In the hands of a skilled, attached, warm, present, loving, consistent parent, that might be manageable. And that sort of energy might get turned into athletic interest or creative interest, and that child won't feel pathologized for their style. But I hate to say it, probably for the majority of kids with that style, it's a lot of stop that, sit down. Can't you be more like your sister? You're going in the corner. You're making a mess. You're going to the principal. So that kid is getting invalidated every time they turn around. That invalidation plus the temperament, plus the possibility that they don't have an environment where there's a possibility for secure attachment, plus the possibility of trauma, chaos, and neglect. That's one pathway to develop a narcissist.
So if I can just make sure I'm understanding, what you're basically saying is, even regardless of temperament, if you're not getting your emotional needs met, if you do not feel safe and secure in your house, if you have a parent that abandons you, a parent that's abusive, somebody with mental illness and addiction, somebody who's unpredictable, that you as a child don't feel safe or you don't feel seen, all those emotional needs, and that's what leads to narcissism?
But not always. In fact, I wouldn't say the vast majority of the time. Many people grew up in situations like that, of trauma, of neglect, of abuse, of chaos. And they do not go on to become narcissistic. They typically go on to become rather anxious adults with poor self-appraisal, who don't know their value and worth, a whole nother different burden to carry. But the narcissist... No, I was actually talking about myself, my dear. So yeah, that's all me. So it's but at the end of it, what we see is that it's still, the problem is that these paths aren't linear. I always say narcissism is a story, the development of narcissism is a story we can tell backwards, but never forwards.
Oh.
So if I'm thinking, I have some clients who have been through horrific early childhood trauma, horrific, physical abuse, sexual abuse, violence. They grew up in chaos. To tell you that these are some of the most empathic, loving human beings I've ever met would be actually missing the mark. They're just solid people. If anything, they don't understand their value. Like their harm is very internalized. It's like, I'm not good enough. I'm not doing enough. But there's so much goodness, so much empathy. They've gone on to become amazing parents, all of that, right? So that early chaos does not damn someone by a long shot. But it does set up these what are called adverse childhood experiences. It definitely, if we view this from a probability standpoint, there's more negative outcomes that could come, either internalized, disliking oneself, or externalized, and that's more of what narcissism could potentially look like. Now, there's a secondary path to narcissism.
Okay.
And that secondary path is actually one we probably should be monitoring in modern times quite a bit, which is the overindulged child. The child who gets whatever they want. Money is spent on them lavishly. You're so great. You're so smart. There was a study done out of Amsterdam. Now, it'll be interesting to see what happens when these kids turn into adults. He was studying children. But what he found, this guy, I think his name was Eddie Brummelmans at the University of Amsterdam, and what he found was that children who were told they are more special than other children, those were the kids that were already showing entitlement and other sort of soft signs of narcissism. So it's not that you're telling your child they're special. It's that you're more special than somebody else.
Oh.
That was sort of the penny drop moment, which is very much what you could imagine a more narcissistic parent doing. My child is more special than the other children. My child deserves special treatment. My child should play the whole game. My child should get this. My child should get that. But you're looking at kids where they're not taught there's three critical things I'd say every child needs.
Okay, so there's three critical things every child needs.
Secure attachment.
So explain it. Secure attachment.
Secure attachment happens when a child has at least one primary caregiver that is consistently available, that the child feels that they can call that caregiver when they need them, that secure attachment develops over the early years. And we're talking birth to like 2 or 3. This is something where you got to lock this in early, right? And that securely attached child in those early experiments done by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, sort of seminal work in the field, what they found was that the child who was securely attached, when mom would leave them in a strange situation, that would be preschool or babysitter or something like that, the child would whimper a little, like, where are you going? But then they would actually calm down very quickly with the soothing of a caregiver. And then when the parent came back to pick them up, the child would be thrilled to see them. In children who are more anxiously or avoidantly or insecurely attached, there would be almost difficult to soothe when at the point the parent came back, and more importantly, when the parent left. So they'd be difficult to soothe when the parent left, and when the parent came back, the child would actually either go into absolutely like another meltdown, almost like, how could you leave me? Or they'd turn their head away from the parent. You see, whereas that securely attached child would actually be happy to see the parent when they returned. See?
Okay.
So now that secure attachment is number one, and that's created by consistency and availability in that early environment. You need one parent doing that and one primary caregiver, to be honest. It's anyone, whoever that child identifies as such. Number two is that children need to learn how to soothe themselves, and they need to learn how to be disappointed. Okay. And we're not letting them do that. Like sometimes you fail. Sometimes you don't get the teacher you want. Sometimes they run out of chocolate ice cream by the time you get up. And you know what? Sometimes you lose at Chutes and Ladders. I remember like saying, I'm going to win this game. And the other people are like, don't let them win. I ain't going to let them win. I'm getting up to the top of the Chutes and Ladders and I'm going to win. And I'm saying, wow, that felt good. And when my daughter said, that's not fair, I said, oh, ho, ho, ho. I won this game. Let's be present with me winning. You want to play again? Sure, we can do that again. But you need to learn to be present, that not every outcome is the way you're going to want it to be. That's number two. Number three is empathy. You've got to foster empathy in children and foster compassion. That can be through books they read, stories they experience, sure, but above all else, in the home. How do they learn that? It's modeled for them. They see parents empathizing or caregivers empathizing with each other. They see extended family empathizing with each other. They see empathy in the classroom. They see empathy in the world. And you can imagine a child who sees none of that, or the parent is acting in a very entitled manner, like, oh, let's just go to the head of the line. We're more important than these people. Or, oh, gosh, we're not sitting in that line. All these things parents do that they think are innocuous in an airport, at a soccer game, at a theme park. Your kid's learning, and their brain is just an explosion of neurons and dendrites, and that's getting filed away under we're special.
The reason why this is so interesting to me is because I think one of the challenges when you have either a narcissistic parent or sibling or boss or somebody that you're in a relationship with is that you think that somehow everything is your fault.
Yes.
And when I learned from you that narcissists are made in childhood, it just opened up this door for me to go, oh, wow. So they didn't choose to be this way. They're not consciously doing this.
It's what it is. It's a regulation issue, right? So it's the sense that a narcissistic person never quite feels safe in the world. Right? Because they never feel safe, they're always on the offense and the defense simultaneously, right? I'm going to win. I'm going to dominate. Me. And are you looking at me? You're looking at me? And then rage. So that constant offense-defense that they play makes them very antagonistic unless things are going exactly the way they want. And where narcissistic people are tricky is that if they feel safe, I got to tell you, it might be one of the most engaging, entrancing, exhilarating, charismatic, charming experiences you've ever had. They've hung the moon, they've hung the sun only for you. It is, I mean, it's dopamine. Okay.
It's literally a Jekyll and Hyde experience.
Really, it is. But then at a time they don't feel safe or they're bored, it's over. And people will spend their lives trying to get back to that hung the sun, hung the moon kind of a moment. And they said they really don't have any more use for you anymore. Then that's it. You ain't going to feel that again.
Can you give everybody the signs of an emotionally immature parent? Because I also think there's this tendency when you first start to realize that your childhood is the source of a lot of the things that are not working in your adult life, but we then go quickly into defending our parents. So we don't want to look at it. But could you just validate for people, what does it mean when your parent is emotionally immature, and what are the signs and behaviors that as a psychologist you can say, yeah, no, this is not acceptable, this is emotional immaturity? I would love to hear that list from you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. So that kind of unpredictability, having the explosive parent, oftentimes an unpredictable, where we're always waiting for the next shoe to drop. Having on the other side of that disconnected parent who's never really either physically present or emotionally present. It can look like being made for different circumstances, different reasons, to parent ourselves or to show up as our siblings' parent or our parents' parent, a parentification. It can look like a lacking of boundaries, where oftentimes for very well-intentioned anxiety-based reasons, we have a hypervigilant, a helicopter type of parent, always micromanaging, always, tending or worrying, overstepping our boundaries, telling us what to think, feel, do with our lives. It can look like that. It can look like a parent, again, who has so many boundaries that they show that emotional disconnection that I was sharing earlier.
How does having a parent who can't handle their own emotions, they're either absent or they're all up in your face or they're inappropriate or abusive or how does that impact you as a child?
When we don't feel safe in our environment, again, because of external circumstances, resources that we lack, our family lacks, or we don't feel emotionally safe to just share ourselves, share our thoughts, share our ideas, share our feelings, that creates an overwhelming emotional experience in us. And without that attunement or that safe, grounded human, again, more often than not, this isn't the one-off, where a parent was screaming and yelling one time when emotions got, ran high. This is when this has become a consistent pattern. It creates overwhelming stress in our child body with a lack of support or a lack of resources that creates us, or that shifts us physiologically, our nervous system, into that survival mode. We are very adaptive creatures. Our body will deal with it in one way or another, by, fighting the situation, by becoming overreactive ourselves as a child. This looks like tantruming, yelling, unable to actually soothe ourselves. It looks like being distracted, a flight type response, where a child is always unable to pay attention, distracted, doing a million different things at once. It creates a shutdown experience. If the stress is too much, too consistent, and I don't have that support, you'll do what I did. And this is exactly where I ended. The last stop on my journey was I just began to check out entirely. And I'm just describing very simply all of the different nervous system cycled responses that we go into when the stress or there is lack of safety in our environment, and we don't have an attuned caregiver to help literally our bodies come back into that regulation or come back into that safe experience.
Wow. Because now I'm visualizing my poor daughter, waking up in the morning like I used to wake up as a little kid, wondering which mom am I going to get today? Good mood, bad mood, loving, not loving, mad at dad, okay with the world. And it sets you in this mode of being, as you say, hypervigilant, which is something going on in your nervous system. And I think for a lot of people that hear this the first time, Dr. Nicole, it's easy to kind of go like, well, isn't everybody's childhood like that? What human being on the planet isn't like that? Like, I'm so used to that. Isn't that what life is like? And you talked about hope earlier. What could it be like if you were to lean into this idea, this proven, documented idea that so much of the problems that you face in your adult life have to do with these stress responses that got locked in during childhood that you now have an opportunity to heal? What could
Yeah,
life be like?
I wanted to say two things quickly too that I think contribute. Some of, first and foremost, it's the reality that when we're children, we don't really have exposure to other experiences of life, right? It isn't until we have peers and we start to go over other people's houses, maybe, and depending again how similar or different they look, we're like, I like to use the analogy, like horses with blinders on, right? We don't have the experience to say, oh, okay, well, this is what it looks like in my house, and it doesn't look like necessarily that everywhere else. So in that very developmentally immature, way of making sense of the world, we'll generalize, we will make statements that, oh, this is what it is for everyone. That then gets complicated by the many of us who, for very different reasons, were told explicitly or indirectly not to talk about how things were. Right. So we either maybe shame ourselves for acknowledging the reality, and we suppress it. We don't allow ourselves to say, you know what, this is how it was in my childhood. That was very much part of my journey. The story that I heard about this present mother, from my siblings didn't match up with my lived experience. And because as a child, we will always defer to the adults around us, especially when we need them to care for us, I suppressed the reality that, you know what, my mom wasn't super present. Outside from celebrating me academically and at softball, my mom spent a lot of time dealing with her chronic pain. That wasn't the story, though, that I heard in my family. So I suppressed my version of reality until I entered my 30s, when I started to say, wait a minute, this is how it was for me. It might have been different for you in your childhoods because my siblings are 15 and 18 years older than me. They also might be locked in a past narrative, right? Unable to come to their own conscious, honest awareness of how it was. And then again, compound it coming from a very heavily influenced Italian family, where family is first and we are tight-lipped. We don't tell, the neighbors. We don't mention what happens inside these four walls to anyone else. Now we do get locked in a narrative that might not match up with what our lived experience is. So to answer your question, the more we become conscious, honest, and allow ourselves to then feel, I've left that out of this whole process, feeling, right, about how it is that our experience was for us, allowing us to say, you know what, I didn't get some needs met, and I'm sad, and I'm in grief, and I'm angry, and I'm a million different things wrapped up into one, allowing us to have that space now to tend to how we feel about the experiences that maybe we have suppressed for so long, for whatever reason it is, will then allow us to begin to change them. Because chances are, if we're really honest and we see ourselves in day-to-day life, we'll see a remnant of those habits, if not living directly within those habits. And again, I just want to share that because a byproduct for many of us, I used to think there was something wrong with my brain, the neurology in my brain, because I came to realize quite early on, when it was a joke with my friends in high school, of how little memories I have. I would go out and do things. I would go out, right? I would do things with them, and I would have no memories. With time with them, I wouldn't be able to even share how my early, Christmases looked. And I started to entertain, Mel, this concern for a very long time that I must have something wrong in my brain, my memory area. I actually submitted myself for a study that I thought I was suffering from something called selective autobiographical memory disorder. I remember it because I thought, oh, okay, that's what's wrong with me. I have this, very rare neurological issue that created this, experience of, I don't remember my childhood. None of that was talked about in my family. It turns out none of us do. And the reason for that is a couple reasons. When we're not fully present, when we don't have that attuned, safe space to be present to what we think, how we feel, how to navigate or regulate our emotions, going from overwhelmingly stressed back into safety, and we begin to check out like I did, we're not consciously present enough to encode the memory itself, the recall, the kind of movie screen of what happened. I'm hesitant to use the word memory because the memory does live within our mind and our body, but we're not able to draw it up, call it to mind, describe it to someone else. And then another aspect of this that impacts memory is stress. When cortisol goes up, which is the major hormone that deals with or that is released within our bodies when we're stressed out, the more consistently, the higher levels of cortisol racing through our mind and body, especially in childhood, when our brain is still developing, because we now know that our brain is actually still developing well into our 20s, that high level of cortisol actually impacts a part of our brain that is responsible or plays a role in memory, which is our hippocampus. So now we're not present. Our hippocampus and the functioning of our hippocampus, one of the memory systems, is impacted. Now we have this experience of, I don't remember. And it took me beginning to share that I don't have memories, walking through the shame of it all, that I'm actually hearing overwhelmingly how few of us really, truly, again, remember those early things. So I just wanted to go down that path quickly, because a question I commonly get then is, well, then how do I heal? Don't I have to go back and tuck myself in and replay that terrible memory and know what happens? And the answer is no, because chances are, again, you're a living memory of that. You'll see it in these moments of emotional immature reactivity, or these moments of shutdown, or even just in your general habits of relating to another human, because all of that is so imprinted, again, in those earliest experiences, that for the many of you listening who, don't have memories, I hope to relieve maybe some of the shame, maybe some of the worries of something neurologically wrong with you that I once had, and also give you the place to start, which is right here, right now, by becoming conscious to how it is you're showing up now. Because again, that often is a remnant of that memory in and of itself, living in your mind, in your body, and often in your relationships, creating the world around you.
So I want to end with some tools that people can use. So one of the ones that you talk about that whenever I share it, I obviously credit you, that people just love this, and that's gray rock.
Yeah, so gray rocking, and that, I can't even take credit from that. Gray rocking is something that's been around for a long time. And gray rocking is a response to the constant baiting that happens in a narcissistic relationship. Narcissistic people love to fight because it makes you look crazy, right? If you're getting frothed up, now you're raging kind of like them, and they're like, oh, you need to calm down. That's a form of gaslighting too. They get you worked up, and then they look at you like you're the one who's unhinged. So the way, in some ways, to bring down that baiting is just completely disengage in the most absolute, but you're not going no contact, but you're saying yes, no, okay, I didn't know that, sure. Now
let me ask you a question about this. Because in our family, somebody has had a situation where there was an ex blowing up their phone and Snapchat. Rage, which once I learned that this was happening, a lot of other young women chimed in. Oh, well, I've had somebody do that. And, it's been dismissed because they're drunk, or because they're this, or because they're upset, or because I'm the ex, or because I'm dating somebody new. And, we're talking 75 texts over the course of one evening. Pick up your phone. Why aren't you? I know you're ignoring me.
That's abuse.
So when it comes to that, you don't respond at all, because aren't they looking for the response?
Yeah.
Aren't they seeking the attention?
Right. Now you can see in a situation like this with gray rocking, like you're like, okay, I'm not responding to this kind of stuff. The behavior is going to escalate for a while, and that escalation scares people. So the gray rocking is if you're going to gray rock as an pathway to an exit, to what's ultimately called no contact, which is a really, really stringent characteristic that a lot of people can't follow, because their families, they have to co-parent, all those things, whatever it may be. Full no contact is when people do it, they're like, this is great, like I never have to have anything to do with them again. But it's not always possible. So the gray rocking will initially enrage the narcissistic person. If you can white knuckle it for long enough.
How long?
It depends on the person.
This is an excellent example for those of you that are in a contentious divorce, for those of you that are dealing with child custody issues, and so you have to negotiate after divorce drop-offs or exes. And so pay attention to this, because you are correct. If you ignore them, they explode because they want your attention.
Right.
And so now they're going to escalate it to try to get it.
So now this is where a friend and colleague of mine developed something called yellow rock. Tina Swithin, who does amazing work in the space of contentious narcissistic divorce. She came up with Yellow Rock. And the idea of Yellow Rock is not so much the yes, no, like you're almost like so dull, but it's like, yeah, sure. Oh, okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Great. There's emotion. There's lilt. There might even be like, oh, you went there? Oh, did you like that? Oh, that's that new grocery store, right? You're not talking about anything. But Yellow Rock isn't so dire. Now, in your obsessive texting example, that's a different kind of a situation because that's a case where you just don't respond.
Correct.
Right? And you save it all. And if it continues like that, you actually might even need to involve law enforcement.
We involved Chris, my husband.
Yeah.
He sent a text back saying, we'll involve law enforcement.
Yeah, exactly.
Knock it off.
So it
worked.
Yeah, it works. In many cases, but in some cases it does not. And there's actually a threshold of the number of communications that have to happen for it to qualify to get law enforcement involved. So it can't be 10 or 20. I mean, it's such a vast number. They're like, oh, so for me to be fully traumatized is the only way law enforcement will respond. And it's true. Those bars are set in a way that it's hard to intervene. But in ordinary situations where it is a lot of where were you on Saturday night? What were you doing? Oh, your friend coming over and say, oh yeah, everything's fine. Like it's very Stepford-y, like da 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 da. But for kids to see gray rocking parents actually is quite traumatizing. That devoid of emotion, robotic feel is unsettling. For kids, it can be unsettling in the workplace. So with Yellow Rocking, I always say to people, have a list of inert, innocuous topics to talk about. The weather, the freeway's going to be closed on Friday. It's can you believe it's only a month till this holiday? Like you have those topics in your back pocket, and then there can be a lot of that. And once they start baiting, then the next technique I recommend people use after gray or yellow rocking is I tell them don't go deep. And don't go deep means don't defend, don't engage, don't explain, don't personalize.
Oh, that was an acronym, everybody.
Yeah, deep.
Don't defend, don't explain, don't
engage, don't personalize.
What does don't personalize mean? So can you give us an example of how this works?
So a person's coming at you with like, oh, great. Yeah, I can see. Oh, what is this? One of your loser friends having one of their stupid fundraisings for one more of their causes? Like, yeah, your friend's like an idiot loser. So sure. Yeah. Well, let's give this person more money. I don't even know why you're friends with these people. Like, is that how pathetic? So you're blah, 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 the noise, they come at you trying to isolate you, right? You don't defend your friends. You don't say, oh, she means so well. She's raised so much money for this community. You don't explain what the charity does. You don't engage in the back and forth. And you don't make it about you. This has nothing to do with you. That has to do with their insecurity.
Their temper tantrum.
Their tantrum, their insecurity, their being set off. And this is a hard one. People say, I told Mary I was going. I RSVP'd. I'm going to be going.
Do you say I'm sorry?
No. What did you do wrong?
Because I'm conditioned to. I don't know. Just want to keep you happy.
I'm sorry.
I don't
know. If I could set up an app that could identify
I think
every
you
time.
just shocked me.
No,
my Lord.
That every time a person says I'm sorry, they did get like a little shock through their watch or
that is
like
the
a ring.
worst thing you could say to a narcissist. I'm sorry.
Well, but no, it's the worst thing you could say for yourself. Why are you apologizing? We're back to the guilt.
Because I have been conditioned to believe that if I do something that makes you mad or disappointed or isn't what you want, that I'm bad.
That's you. That's a you thing. That's your work. Because
I'm
going to Mary's fundraiser. I'm going to Mary's fundraiser. Why should I say I'm sorry? I RSVP'd 4 weeks ago. I am not getting into Mary's character assassination because you feel threatened. I'm none of that. I RSVP'd a month ago. I'm planning on going. I'll be leaving at 7. Done. You can do it with a smile on your face.
I'll tell you, I just sit here and think, why on earth would you put up with that in your life? Maybe I'm combative. Good days,
you know what I mean?
Maybe I'm combative. And I'm like, listen, asshole, I make my own money and I'm going to give it to whoever the fuck I want.
It's the good days and the bad days because you actually had a really nice dinner out on Saturday night.
And they had a bad day today, and they're stressed out, and they had a lot of childhood trauma.
And relationships are hard, and everything's compromised, and they don't really mean it, and blah 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 blah. So if you could get into the multiple truths, break out of the cognitive dissonance, say like,
I can't be judgy. I'm sorry.
am married to a person
who's an asshole.
Yeah, I was just going to say deeply insecure and reactive, which is code for ass. See, asshole is the one tiny word that gets at that. But I am married to a deeply insecure person who is a rager. That is who I'm married to.
That is a truth.
And say that sentence out loud. It all relates to a concept called cognitive dissonance. We don't like it when incompatible things are happening.
That's true.
So to break the tension, we justify.
That's true. So it's like the truth, the things that are true are I am married to somebody who is an insecure jerk, right? Yep. Because of childhood trauma, whatever, and rages. I also have children with this person. Mm-hmm. I also don't want to go through the nightmare of divorcing this person. I'm going to work on my own stuff in order to have that cognitive, psychological dissonance, in order to figure out my own stuff.
But you can see after you do all that, you know how people feel? They feel sad. They're like, this is my life.
Yes, because once you actually wake up and do the work, and that's you just did a Trojan horse. We want you to go to therapy so you become more confident and more self-aware that you actually do not deserve this.
Correct.
This is not your fault. The weather in Chicago is something you can't change. Oh, sneaky. I like that.
Yeah,
I like that kind of personal
empowerment.
All
about therapy's always about finding those back doors, and you can't walk in the front door. We learned that in day one of therapy class.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow, you are so smart. You are so smart. The most important relationship that you have in life, and that's the relationship you have with yourself. I am going to introduce you to a habit that I want you to practice immediately. It is a habit that is based on profound research, and it is a habit that will help you improve the relationship you have with yourself. It will impact your happiness, your sense of control, your confidence. This is the Mac Daddy of all habits. You master this habit, you improve the relationship you have with yourself, and this is like the first domino. You know how in dominoes, when you line them up, there's that one domino that, boom, you knock that sucker over and woohoo, I can't even, all the other dominoes fall. So we are talking about the gateway to creating a positive ripple effect in your life and improving the relationship with yourself. And also, it is the secret, this habit, to self-acceptance and self-love. We know we should love ourselves. We should be kind to ourselves. We should accept ourselves. But nobody knows how to do it. And that's what this entire episode is about. I am going to boil the how down to one extraordinarily simple habit backed by a crazy amount of research that we will link to, and my own research study involving 175,000 people from 91 countries who tried this habit for 5 days in a row. So that means we've got data points that stack up to 175,000 times 5. I don't even know what that number is, but it's pretty big. This works. It's high-fiving yourself every morning in the mirror as part of your morning routine. That's it. And I've got the research to prove it. I've got studies to prove it. And what we have found based on our research is that it takes less than 5 days for you to have an absolutely profound breakthrough in your relationship to yourself by simply adding a high five in the mirror once a morning to your morning routine after you brush your teeth. And at the end of this episode, I want you to stick around because you are going to hear one of the most profound testimonials ever about the impact that one high five made on a woman's life named Chris. Like, you're going to need to bring the Kleenex because this is so goosebump, empowering, and encouraging, and exciting. I'm not kidding. This is profound, profound, profound. And I know that you struggle with self-love because none of us know how to do it. I get questions on this every single freaking day. How do I love myself? I know I need to love myself, Mel, like this one from Maria.
Hi, Mel. This is Maria from Spain. Can you explain how to learn to love yourself? I know I need to love myself as a part of my self-growth. but no one tells you how to do that. I'm curious, is there something I can do about that?
I love this question because she's right. We all know we need to love ourselves, but how the hell do you do that when nobody has taught you how? I think the main reason why this concept of self-love is so hard to implement in our lives is because of the definition of love. If you look in the dictionary, love is defined as a feeling, but that's not what it is. Love is an action. And let's just take an example from your life. When you feel loved by somebody else, it's because of how they treat you. It's because of what they say to you. Like, for example, when Chris brings me a cup of coffee in the morning, I feel loved because of that action. When he says, I love you, Mel, I feel loved because of the action of speaking those words. But when it comes to loving ourselves, we're sitting around waiting for the feeling, and yet we're not recognizing the truth about love. You feel loved by other people when they demonstrate it through actions. The secret to self-love is demonstrating to yourself through your own actions toward yourself that you love yourself. And that's why the simple solution to having a breakthrough in loving yourself, the first domino that needs to fall, is something that I call the high five habit. This is a simple habit that I created that boiled down is simply adding a high five in the mirror to yourself, to your morning routine. That's what the high five habit is. Now, one of the reasons why I love this habit is because it has so much research. And the habit's very simple. When you wake up tomorrow morning, get yourself out of bed, go into the bathroom, brush your teeth, and then after you brush your teeth, you're going to put your toothbrush down. And the reason why I want you to do it after you brush your teeth is because I want to use some science called habit stacking. I want this to be part of your morning routine, what you're about to do. And so I want you to do it right after something that you do every morning, brushing your teeth. That way your brain will encode this high five habit even faster. And here comes the most important part. As you put the toothbrush down, you are going to look in the mirror. This is the hardest part of the high five habit. You're going to look in the mirror, and I don't want you to look through the person in the mirror. I want you to realize there's a human being that's standing in the mirror there with you every morning in the bathroom, and you have either ignored them or you have looked at all of the things you don't like about that person, whether it's the weight that you've put on or it's the bags under your eyes, or for me, it's one boob hanging lower than the other boob. You sit there and judge that person, or based on our research and studies, 50% of men and women cannot or will not look at themselves in the mirror. And the reason is so freaking sad. It's because they don't like the person they've become, or they have so many regrets in life about things that they did or the place that they thought that they would be that they can't and won't look at themselves in the mirror. And if you can't look at yourself in the mirror, let's just stop at that right there, because what do you do with somebody you love? What's the action when you see somebody you love? You look them in the eyes. That gaze, eye to eye, gives you not only dopamine, but the oxytocin that is in your brain. It is powerful. It's an act of love to really make eye contact and hold a gaze with love and compassion behind it. So if you can't do that and you're not doing that, you're every morning demonstrating not love, you're demonstrating rejection and criticism. And so first step of the high five habit, you are going to put your toothbrush down and you're going to look at yourself in the eye. And it's going to feel weird if you don't normally do this. And the next part of this is very simple. Whenever you feel ready, you're going to raise your hand and you're going to high five the person you see in the mirror. Now, one of two things will happen when you do this. And again, I have so much data on this, I know, because we've studied what happens. What's going to happen when you go to high five the mirror is you will either laugh out loud, and you'll laugh out loud because it's kind of dorky and funny. That's what I did the first time I high fived myself in the mirror. But you're also laughing because your brain recognizes a high five. And so one of the coolest things about high-fiving yourself in the mirror is the science involved. It's called neurobics. You're using research in a field called neurobics, which is when you marry a physical action with a new positive thought you want to create. They've studied this at MIT. They've studied it all over the world. It is the fastest way to create new neural pathways and new thought patterns, to marry physical action like a high five with a new thought. And here's where the high five in the mirror gets really cool. So you're leveraging neurobics, all of this sort of physical activity plus neuroscience. You're also getting the benefit of the release of dopamine. You're also getting the benefit of the fact that your brain and your body knows what a high five is because you've been high-fiving people your whole life, right? You've seen high fives in sports on television. You know exactly what a high five is. A high five is something that you give somebody, a physical action, when you're cheering for them, when you're encouraging them. A high five is something that you give to somebody when you're proud of them. Great shot. Good job on that test. And a high five is also something that you give to another human being whenever they need encouragement. So think about like standing on the side of a road race. You don't cross your arms and scowl at people. You high five people and cheer for them because you're trying to say, I see you. I see that this race is hard. Keep going. You got this. If you're on a sports team and you blow a play when you come to the huddle, a high five from a coach or a teammate says, shake it off. I believe in you. Now get back in the game. And so what's so cool about this high five habit to yourself in the mirror is that a lifetime of positive programming, neurologically already in your brain, gets aimed right back at your reflection. And so you are physically demonstrating with this simple habit in less than 5 seconds every single morning that you, yes, you take actions that show that you believe in, you love, and you encourage the person in the mirror. Now, another reason why I love this habit is you don't have to think anything. All of the wiring that is already in your brain and in your nervous system, it does the work for you silently. As I mentioned, there is so much research, and we're going to just put dozens and dozens and dozens of studies. But I want to also point out that there are 2 studies that are really important. One of them was done with the NBA, and I'm just going to cut to the chase on this study. They wanted to know if there were any habits that winning teams had that the losing teams in the NBA didn't have in the preseason. And it turned out, after crunching all the data, and this has been verified by the Wall Street Journal too, beyond the study that these scientists did, that the top 4 teams in the NBA, in fact, do have a habit in the preseason that the losing teams do not. You want to know what that habit is? You guessed it. They have more high fives, fist bumps, pats on the back in the preseason among team members than any of the other teams. Why? Well, because a high five isn't just an action and a physical gesture that means nothing. A high five actually says, I am with you. It builds trust, it builds partnership, it builds belief, and you can build that back in yourself by adding the high five in the mirror every single morning as part of your morning routine. There was another study done with kids where they made a bunch of kids take these math tests, and these researchers wanted to know what's the best way to encourage someone through a challenging moment. And they found that it wasn't words of encouragement like, hey, you're a great student. It wasn't the growth mindset words like, hey, really admire how hard you're working. You want to know the single best way to motivate kids to do something challenging? It's to say nothing and to give them a high five. This was so profound that the researchers, and we'll link to this study, changed the name of the study to include the surprising power of a high five, the surprising motivational power of a high five. That's how exciting this is. And I think you can hear this because I stumbled onto this by mistake. I started high-fiving myself right after I had gotten fired, basically, from hosting my own talk show. And I needed to give myself like a pick-me-up. And I just instinctually one morning raised my hand and high-fived the mirror. And the immediate effect that I felt of the dopamine in my mind and the boost in my mood and this sense of, okay, I got it. I can do this. I can face this. Having my own back, demonstrating it to myself during a really low moment, it was the beginning, that first domino that fell, of an entirely new relationship with myself. It's what led me to get into intensive therapy and to start getting serious about my happiness. And I think everything comes back to you and the relationship that you have with yourself. And so we're going to go deep on this because the relationship that you have with yourself is the single most important thing in the world. And in addition to sharing this research and this simple habit with you, I want to unpack some of the things that people experience when they do it, because I've had so many questions about this, like this one from Teresa.
How do I stop beating myself up and forgive myself for my past mistakes?
I can't believe how many years you waste beating yourself up for past mistakes. And the reason why we do that is we don't know how to forgive ourselves, because we don't know how to accept ourselves. We don't know how to accept the failures, the regrets, the disappointments. We don't know how to accept, we don't know how to love ourselves through it. And that's where, honest to God, this simple habit of demonstrating it every morning in the mirror as part of your morning routine changes everything. And we got to take a short break for our sponsors, but don't you dare go anywhere, because I have so much to share with you, and I'm going to invite my husband, Chris, to come and join us. Because when I first shared this high five habit thing that I had discovered a couple years ago with him, when I first stumbled into doing it for myself, he thought it was the stupidest thing he had ever heard. And of course, because I'm relentless and annoying, I was like, but you got to do it for 5 days. You got to try it. You got to try. And what happened when he tried it for 5 days was both life-changing, profound, and it was heartbreaking for me to hear as a spouse just how much my husband was struggling, and how the simple assignment of looking yourself in the eyes was impossible for him to do at that time. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe, because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you, so make sure you subscribe. Mwah.